it is extraordinary to listen to. When Liam Neeson was saying all this to you, your reaction at the end is sort of quite muted. But what were you thinking in the moment?
Hi, Piers. Honestly, in the moment, it all went very fast. You do not go into a celebrity press junket for a Hollywood movie expecting to hear that story. It came in response to a question about the film. So, you know, I think what I felt immediately was a very strong sense of responsibility and a strong sense of duty to tell the story as sensibly as possible.
Clemence,
and as fully as possible.
That's interesting what you say, because you say it came out of a question about the movie. What was the question that extraordinary story was the answer to?
So his character in the film that this was in promotion for is a snowplow driver whose son gets killed by a drug gang. And instead of mourning and doing, you know, the work that most people in real life would do internally, which is to grieve and then move on, his character goes on a string of killings. And so I said, why does this character do that instead of grieving like most people would do? And first, Liam Neeson pointed out that otherwise there would be no story, and if the character didn't do that. And so it looked like it was going to be sort of a throwaway question. And then he launched into that part of the audio that you heard. Well, for start, you know, I'll tell you a story. And then I listened.
And Clemence, when you were writing the story and you saw exactly what he'd said, when you transcribed back your tape and you realised what he said, did you grasp then the significance and the potential enormity of the repercussions for Liam Neeson? And did that affect in any way your decision to publish, to not publish, to dilute it in some way, to talk to him again?
Of course, you know, the piece was the subject of a lot of discussions with my editors. There was never, you know, this was a story that came during a press junket. You pointed out earlier, Piers, that Liam Neeson has done dozens of interviews. He volunteered the story. If you listen back to the tape, and I've done so many, many times, I can pretty much, you know, go through it by heart now. You get a sense that, I mean, you know, it's not a throwaway line. He decided to tell the story that had been apparently weighing on him for a while. It wasn't a question of, you know, lightening what he said in any way. That's not what we're here for. If we had wanted to do that, it wouldn't have been our, you know, top story on the website for now 24 hours almost. No, it was just telling the story as fully as possible.
And let me ask you, I mean, given what he has said, you obviously, I don't know your career very well, but I'm assuming you did lots of movie stars and so on if you were doing this junket here. I mean, should Liam Neeson survive this? Should his career be able to continue, given what he has said to you is effectively, if a black person, any black person, had come into his orbit in that week and said the wrong thing to him, he was going to murder them?
So people have reacted with obviously a lot of shock and outrage, and people are stunned and they're appalled, and that, you know, that's what we're not surprised by this. The shock is justified. Liam Neeson himself is apparently very stunned by his own thought process. He says it himself, that it's awful. Whether or not that's career ending, that's a question you raised earlier. I think it's ultimately up to the studios and to moviegoers to tell. I wouldn't speculate. He's not the first Hollywood actor to face backlash for something he said or something he's thought. But I think, yeah, it's still too early to call.
Well, the only parallel I can think of is Mel Gibson, who said horrendous things to his, I think it was his Russian girlfriend or wife at the time, which were deeply racist. But he was, you know, making threats about what he wanted to happen to her from other third parties. And he was very racist when he said it. I think the difference here with Liam Neeson is he's talking about himself and his own thought process, which was for an entire week, not a moment of madness, but a 7-day, rampage around the streets, waiting for any black person to say the wrong thing so he could kill them. I mean, I just think, I can't think of anything, to be honest, more staggering that has come out of a movie star's mouth, certainly in modern times, than this. And I would be very surprised if Liam Neeson's career is not now in very serious trouble.
Yes, I mean, that's a completely understandable. And again, there's been a lot of shocked reactions on social media and online. People can't believe what they're hearing. I've certainly had to play that tape many, many times to wrap my head around it. You're right when you point out this could have repercussions. Again, that remains to be seen. That's certainly not my call to make, ultimately.
Did you get the sense that he'd been open about that with anyone else? Perhaps afterwards? Perhaps when he realised what he'd said?
Based on the coverage I've seen today, this interview that I did with him, that's all I've heard of it so far. It was certainly a very startling moment. Like you said, it was a celebrity junket, so you have a time slot, and I had 20 minutes with Liam Neeson and his co-star Tom Bateman. It's all very rigid, very regimented. You don't expect to get this sort of startling story out of it. And I mean, obviously, I don't know what's in every other reporter's notebooks, but certainly from what I've seen so far, this is the only time he shared it. You can hear, if you listen to the tape, that it sounds like he decided to unload the story that had been burdening him. But yeah, that's the only, that's all I've heard so far.
We're told that he's due to appear on Good Morning America, one of the big morning shows over there, our equivalent in many ways in New York. Be interesting if he keeps the appointment, if he decides to front this up.
Yeah.
Radio 1 presenter Clara Amfo said that she was, quote, thinking about what broadcaster host Liam Neeson is going to use to try to exonerate himself from that admission of his. Well, it may well be Good Morning America. The fascinating thing there is I think at least one of the hosts there is black. What do? I mean, this is such an indiscriminate thing. Frederick Joseph in the Daily Mail, who launched a GoFundMe appeal to take underprivileged children from Harlem in New York to see the superhero film Black Panther, tweeted, Liam Neeson being ready to take any black life over what one person allegedly did just shows how meaningless and inconsequential black lives are to some. Even him telling the story demonstrates a level of privilege and understating that there may not be repercussions. And I think that's the key point here. I think it's going to be a huge story, this, for Liam Neeson. I think that right now, I'd imagine, he will be with his management team and his lawyers trying to work out how to save his career, because there will be many people, if I was a black person right now reading this from Liam Neeson...
If you were a black actor about to act with Liam Neeson...
I would not want to see this guy's movies right now. I don't want to see this guy's movies right now if that's his attitude, frankly. I mean, does anybody? I mean, just it's so indiscriminate, so racist.